Free markets does not mean no government regulation. Why Republican policies increase government dependency and the national debt. Background. First, Republicans state as a party platform that they dislike government dependency and government debt. In general, both of the above are in fact negative phenomenon. Second, Republicans state as a party platform that the way to reduce government dependency and government debt is the use of free markets. In general, free markets do in fact reduce government dependency and government debt. 3. Republican policies do not favor free markets, they in fact favor anarchy. Republicans conflate free with no rules as a political trick to favor the wealthy and their donors rather than a fair system of competition. Anarchy, in fact, increases government dependency and debt. What's a free market? Free market does not mean no rules. In fact, economics textbooks define the term with a strict set of requirements. These include, but are not limited to, first, no buyer and seller is powerful enough to set the price, perfect information, buyers and sellers know everything about the product and the transaction, and no externalities, third parties that are uninvolved in the transaction are not hurt. Perfect markets rarely, if ever, exist in nature. If a perfect free market for a product exists, government intervention can only make that market more inefficient. Perfect free markets are almost impossible to find in nature. Inevitably, one player will be big enough to set prices, products typically involve externalized costs like pollution to third parties, etc. Even if a market starts out perfect, it will almost inevitably be more profitable for some group to break the rules of the market than to outcompete their competitors. For example, one very obvious assumption of a perfect free market is that no one can physically rob anyone else of their goods or money. However, it is usually less work to rob someone at gunpoint than it is to create a product, market it, and to sell it. If it were not illegal, many people would choose to rob people because it involves greater profit and less work. The current Republican platform. Number 1. Go on Fox News and extol the virtues of free markets. 2. Conflate free markets with government getting out of the way and/or no rules. For example, the EPA is making business too expensive. We need to loosen the rules and let markets take over. Another example, Dodd-Frank and the SEC just increased the regulatory burden on financial industries. We need to get rid of the rules and let markets take over. So here's how Republican policies create anarchy and then create government dependence and debt. Example number 1, the EPA. In a perfect free market, there are no externalities that go unpaid for. Jim runs a factory and initially makes $2 million a year. However, he inflicts $3 million a year in added healthcare costs like asthma due to his factory polluting the local populace's air. In a perfect free market, Jim will go out of business. The local population will sue him for damages, and he will end up $1 million in debt. The market has worked. An inefficient business has been weeded out. In reality, the local population will often not be able to meet its burden in court, demonstrating that the local factory was the cause and fact of its asthma. Some citizens may win their lawsuit, but almost certainly less than 100% of them. In addition, some suffering citizens may be too busy working to spend their time in court, and others may be too poor or sick to afford the initial outlay for attorney's fees. In Republicans' limit government rules mantra, the EPA is powerless to enact rules preventing air pollution. After all, government is not the solution to our problems, it is the problem. Jim will continue to get rich at the expense of everyone else who cannot win their lawsuits. The local population's breathing problems may get so bad that they can no longer continue to work. Many will be forced to rely on charity. When there is not enough charity, they will be forced to rely upon government handouts. Government handouts increase the national debt. Second example is financial regulation and reporting requirements. In a perfect free market, all players have perfect information. Jim runs an investment firm that reports to make $10 billion a year. However, Jim cooks the books and his company is actually broke. In a perfect free market, no one would have invested in Jim's company. Any potential investor would have perfect information about Jim's company and would know he isn't actually generating profits for customers. An inefficient business will be weeded out. In reality, investors do not have unlimited time to research Jim's company. Many will fall for his fraudulent claims, and their savings will be wiped out. Under Republicans' limit government rules mantra, the SEC will be powerless to enact strict reporting requirements for Jim or punishments for violating them. Jim will get rich stealing his investors' money. When the investors' savings are wiped out, they will be forced to take charity. When there's not enough charity, they will be forced to depend on government handouts. Government handouts increase the national debt. Are all government regulations good? Of course not. This is a straw man fallacy. For example, imagine the SEC literally mandated that financial firms jump through 30 hoops before each transaction. The government regulation does nothing to make the market more perfect and will only increase costs. So which government regulations are good and which bad? Isn't it just all subjective and political? Good government regulations are those that make actual markets look more like economics textbook perfect market scenarios. This is complicated but not subjective. There's a fundamental difference between the two. What we are sure of is that no rules almost never is the same thing as a perfect free market.